This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and NIL Game Changers. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Brewers Outlet, NIL Game Changers, Sunbury Motor Company, and Purdy Insurance. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
And this half hour, the opening half hour, brought to you by Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket, imports, domestics, microbrews, the best selection of beer anywhere. Wine coolers, water, soft drink, snacks. They roast their peanuts fresh and out every day. Pickle bar, led by the barrels and the dills, indeed second to none. All at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. And we're in the Sunbury Motors studio, Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. One of my favorite people on this planet joins me now. Chris Wheeler. Wheels, first of all, how are you doing, my friend?
Well, I'd like to say back at you on favorite people, and I'm great, Steve. The Phillies are in Lakeland today, and I'm standing at the back of the driving range at Bel Air Country Club with a 1:45 tee time. So that doesn't get much better.
That's pretty good. All right, I love it.
Yeah, I knew you would.
That's a pretty good deal. Just so you know, it's 34 here, and I thought about the driving range, and the thought passed.
Yeah, well, it got a little chilly up there. I heard you. We got a little cooler down here today too. It's only going to be about 70 today, but it's a little cooler. Yeah.
Oh, that was just like a knife in the back. Thanks.
Yeah, you know.
Hey, you had to do it. You had to do it.
Yeah. One time.
Hey, what's it been like being down there with the ball club down there for spring training?
You know, I love it. I love my role now too because it bothered me that first year in 2014 when I wasn't going to be on the air anymore, and I thought, how can they play the season without me? And then they left and went to Texas for a year or two. But now I go out there and I smell the exhaust from the buses when they pull out after the last game. I mean, I get to stay here till July. Have a great place right on this golf course, 36 holes, and life is good. Life is good. And I do the PA still, which I've been doing pretty much since 1972. So I still do that out there. I'm still involved. So I'm around the ball club. And then when the time goes when it's serious, when I don't want to be serious anymore, they leave.
You know what? Is there a part of this, okay, that you don't miss at all? I'll bet you miss the games. You probably miss the guys. But there's a part that you just don't miss?
Probably the travel, Steve. You know what that's like when you're bouncing around like you do, on a weekend and then for your basketball games. So I went 37 years. I'm not complaining because, you know me, I don't do that. But I went 37 years and did not miss a road trip. I mean, that's a lot of traveling and a lot of time that you don't have to yourself because when you come home, then you do all the home games too. So that one thing I don't miss anymore is the travel. And the other thing probably would be that it was just starting when I got out, was having to deal with the social media and the texting and all that nonsense. It used to be if somebody didn't like you, they had to write you a letter. You know that feeling. And now, within 15 seconds, they can say some dumb thing, and and it's all over the place. And then you're reading it while you're sitting there between innings and getting ticked off. So anyway, that was just starting basically when I got out. And that's one thing that I certainly do not miss because they kind of make you have social media accounts now to interact with the fans. And I understand the part of that. But when you do what we do for a living and you know exactly what I mean, you don't need somebody sitting in their basement second-guessing you.
No. And you know what's interesting is Jack, Dick, and I don't do it. We don't do it. I mean, literally, none of us have. I mean, do I technically have a social media account? I do, because the radio station here makes me have it. I've never posted on it. I've never read it. I don't know what's on there, right? But the three of us, Girardi, Ham, and I, don't do it. Now, I worked with, I did some Big Ten Network games with Jim Jackson, and I remember in commercial breaks, he'd be on his phone. Yeah. I finally looked over and I said, "Hey, Jimmy," I said, "I'm just curious." I said, "Not me. I'm about as judgmental as the wall." I said, I said, what's just curious? What's the deal with the phone? He goes, Steve, they're making me post on social media, and commercial breaks, what I'm seeing. Like, you got to be kidding me, right? And he didn't want to do it. Jim Jackson's a great guy, but the social media part, no offense. I remember Learfield saying to us, "You could post about injuries." I said, "Well, why do we have a pregame show?"
Right. Yeah. Well, they were starting to put a little pressure on me there in the last year in 2013, and I flat out, ornery enough and at that point established enough. I said, no, I'm not doing it. Well, I think that was one of the reasons why they decided to move on from me, because they were could understand pretty much that I either wasn't going to do it or I was going to do it so little, and I wasn't going to do what they wanted to do and get involved in controversies with people I don't know. So I just didn't do it. But that would be the thing probably, that I miss not having to do, or not miss having to do, and I'd probably have to do that if I still wanted to be around, and now I don't. I want to text you before a game and ask you, how you doing? I can do that.
But he knows he can text me about anything. But that's because we're so close. That has nothing to do, right? This isn't social media, right? But I've told my class, I said, I don't have to do it. I said, but you do, because it's just the era. And I've told them, you need to have responsibility, because if you get into a Twitter fight with somebody, the only person that loses is always the known entity, not the anonymous person.
Amen. And I get a kick when I hear people say, well, I erased it, or I did, it's not, it's out there somewhere. And kids now, kids do this stuff nowadays, and then they go to get a job, and they got some video out there of them, dancing with a sock on their head or something worse, at a frat party, and they wonder, well, why doesn't that guy want to hire me? I thought I got rid of that. Well, they can find anything nowadays. So, anyway, the best thing to do is without you and me sounding like a couple of Neanderthals is to understand what it really is. It does have advantages. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. But I think in our business, it has a lot more disadvantages.
And you know what? The last thing you need to do is think. Seriously, you do all that prep because when it comes time, you're just doing what's in front of you. I'm going to ask you about the ball club in a second.
Yeah, sure.
But I saw I don't know if you know Mike Gorman at all, who's done the Celtics for 43 seasons. He's retiring after this. All right, and I know Mike a little bit, and he was. When he first started, he came in with all these notes. And Tom Heinsohn, he's him telling the story to Harry Smith, takes the notes and throws them in the garbage. He said, let's just talk about what we're watching. Right?
Yeah.
And in the end, that's what you and I actually do. Yeah, I've got stuff in case I need it, but it's only in case I need it.
Right. And I totally agree with that. I've always said to people, don't write down a lot of talking points that you think you have to fit into a broadcast. No problem. Look, what we did, if you want to put a few things down and it's 10-0 in the first inning and you're losing and you're in California, you can hear everything clicking off and nobody's watching anymore, and you want to entertain yourself or a few people that are out there, then you can refer back to this story that I could tell about Tommy Lasorda back in those days or something. But no, I never was one of those ones that some broadcasters where they'd write down 10 talking points and then they'd try to fit, 8 of them in at some point when it made no sense to even put them in there because they had done some research on it. So, they can help. But you really have to understand what you can do and not do.
the game is still the thing. It's not the whatever. Okay. That's okay. Everybody, get off our lawns.
Yeah, I feel like Clint Eastwood right now.
That's right. So, look, it's obviously can be a hodgepodge this time of the year with the number of lineups. They're just trying to see what people can and can't do. What's been your general impression of the team?
Well, this team is different, very different from a lot of teams that I've been around. A little bit last year, but especially this year, where you don't come to spring training and talk about if this guy makes a club, if this guy plays second, if this guy plays short. You know what your lineup is. You basically know who the position players are. You're trying to put your pitching staff together in the order that you want it to and have it healthy, and to have your bullpen healthy. Because nowadays, bullpens are so huge, especially early in the year, because the starters don't go that many innings, and you need relief pitchers, and you have to carry a guy or even two that can give you multiple innings, because you can't throw those one-inning guys out there every day, because you're going to have them blown out by June if you do that. So it's a very different game that way. This team went to the World Series and obviously should have gone to the World Series last year. I give Arizona all the credit in the world because they did what they had to do, but that was incredibly disappointing not to be able to win one more game there. And, people look at this team again and say, it has a potential to be in postseason. We still have to deal with the Atlanta Braves, obviously, and they're extremely difficult. And you say, well, you knocked them off twice. Yeah, but you don't want to get in that thing where you got to knock them off 3 times in a row and try and avoid that because they're just so solid. So it's a good team. There's a lot of guys down here that aren't getting any hits, or people get concerned, and I understand that. But I remember John Kruk going over the spring one year, and he said, what do you think, I want to leave them down here? So, there's two ways to look. There's 2 ways to look at it. Harper's back's bothering him a little bit. He said he hasn't played for a few days. But, and he has such a violent swing anyway. I don't have to describe his swing to you. He doesn't do anything easy. I don't even think his practice swing's easy, it seems like. So it's a little bit of a concern, I think. But other than that, knock on wood, this time last year is when Hoskins blew that ACL. So, you just count your blessings and hope they can go another week and everybody's healthy.
And you understand the grind of this. I mean, I realized the fan going and watching games and so forth, but how difficult is it to project the team in March because of the grind and all the twists and turns that could possibly take place over 6.5 months?
Well, what I've always said about baseball, and to people that talk about, you got your team, there'll probably be 40, 50 guys active at some point during the season before it's over, and some of them playing really, really key roles for you that you didn't count on when you left Florida. So that's a big, big part of baseball. The 25, 26 that go north, there's so many changes that go on during the season because of guys you may have to option because they're not playing very well, or you trade, or unfortunately they get hurt and you have to replace them with people. So pitching depth is it's like a football team or a basketball team. You got to have depth because the same guys aren't going to play all the time because they're going to get hurt and they're going to get tired, and you need other guys to step in that are major league caliber baseball players. Right now, this is a really good team that will leave here on paper, but who knows what it's going to look like in June or July, and that's what you really have to worry about.
All right, I got to give you your shot before you go out and start striping drives.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
I wish.
Just say,
you know what?
Steve,
obviously, I thought about that today as my segment comes on the show. And, at this time of the year, there's not much I can ask you except for you to tell me, and you've seen so many of them, and I've been lucky enough to be there with you a few times for spring practice. What do you think?
Well, I mean, what's interesting is that with 3 new coordinators, right, everybody's getting used to everybody. Now, Andy, Koltanicki, and Tom Allen were here in December. So they at least know people. Part of it is how much terminology was kept in, and with different elements, what new terminology is now in there. Because as you know, you have to. It's like acquiring a catcher from another team, right? Okay, they have to learn the language of the pitching staff and also the pitching coach and the manager, right? Right out of the gate. Well, it's the same thing you got to do, except you got to do this with 50 guys on each side of the ball. What terminology did you keep in? What new terminology do you have? And then you put in what works along the way. So that's where they have been. And I think that to this stage, I like what I'm seeing. I see the depth, which is big. I see the athleticism, which is really important, right? And I see that they've got some stuff as to what can be, but going back to what you just said about the ball club, all right, how healthy are you going to be as time goes? Because there'll be twists and turns. That's why I look at the depth all the time. I'm always looking at the second and thirds because there's some point those second and thirds might have to be elevated for a game or two to be ones and twos.
Really? Well, I got to tell you, I met Coach Higgins down here.
Good,
which
Marcus,
was interesting. Yeah. He came. He met somebody from our organization on a flight coming to this area, and they invited him to come to a ball game. And then Rob Brooks, who's our director of broadcasting, he said, "Well, you got to meet this guy because he's a big Penn State." So it was cool. I went downstairs and I met Coach Higgins and his family, and his wife was saying, we were on a flight coming down here, and people found out that Penn State football coach was on. She said, but I didn't want to tell him what position he was coaching. That was a great line. So I talked to him a little bit because he could tell I kind of knew what I was doing. And I asked him about Lambert Smith and all. I said, you got to figure out ways for those Yankees to stop dropping when he's out there because that kind of sets you back a little bit. He laughed. Yeah. So, but that is one position I think that you can speak to that probably needs a little upgrade or some guys to step up. I think.
Well, Fleming is going to be a good player. You can see it right away. He's precise. He knows the offense. Good hands, and he can block. Now, I look at Lambert Smith in the same way I look at Devon Ellis and Akeem Beamon. If you went into the transfer portal, right, and you were able to acquire those three guys, right, you'd feel better about your football team. Right? Well, they kept those guys, including Lambert Smith. And Lambert Smith is a guy that has, obviously, the potential to be very good. And I think he's going to be helped out by the presence of Fleming, just like a healthy Harrison Wallace makes a big difference. And then Liam Clifford's a good player. And let's see who else steps up. Like, does a Saunders step up? A couple of other guys you're looking at that can step up. Who can step up to fill those spots of maybe 5 through 7? Because I feel good about the first 5. Amari Evans has a chance to be one of those guys that can step up. So it's not like they don't have talent there. They do, but the word you had was the perfect word, consistency.
Yeah. Well, he, everything I heard about him, too, and a buddy of mine who works for the Phillies named John Brazier is a Virginia grad, and everything I've heard about Coach Higgins is that he can really recruit, and he's from down that way, too, in that Delmarva area has been pretty good to the Penn State over the years, with Virginia and Maryland. And that's an understatement. So you would think he probably could help us a little bit in that area, too.
Well, I used the Delmarva term once with James, and he looked at me and went, what? I said, DMV. He goes, oh, yeah. He says, Delmarva. I said, yeah.
Hey, he's from Philadelphia. What do you expect?
I know. I got it.
He would laugh. I said that. He's a suburban Philly kid like me. We have our limitations.
Hey, I'm going to let you go play and enjoy it. Have a great time out there. And I'm going to go to practice this afternoon. So
tell Coach Higgins I was asking for him and James.
I will.
Too.
Oh,
hey,
no, I will.
By the way,
Renee,
Renee, I'm playing with Renee. She just pulled up here right now with Lynn Montgomery, David's wife. We're going to go out and play, and she, of course, loves you and said to say hi. So I want to
tell
pass that
Renee, okay, give her a big hug from me, please. All right?
Will do. All right.
All right. Thanks, my friend.
Pleasure. Keep in touch now. Always enjoy catching up with you.
You got it.
Okay, Steve. See you.
That is the great Chris Wheeler joining us on the show. We'll go from that level of conversation to listening to Matt. Oh, I'm sorry. Was that the wrong promo? This half hour brought to you by Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket, here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Spring has sprung, and it's time to dust off those insurance policies. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855 or visit our website at purdyinsurance.com to see what we can do for you.
There's something to be said about a sale with a handshake, a service technician who really knows what he's doing. They can explain it in English what the problem is. There's nothing better than having that friend you could trust in the area. That's Sunbury Motors, where you get selection, knowledgeable salespeople, and prices that fit your budget, and more important, that friend you can trust. Welcome to Sunbury Motors, Kia, Ford, and Hyundai. You could shop other dealers and compare prices, but at Sunbury Motors, you get their lowest price promise. They research the current used vehicle market and guarantee their used car prices are the lowest. If you find a lower price, Sunbury Motors will beat it. 3 dealers all in one. See their full new and pre-owned inventory at sunburymotors.com. Pick out a vehicle you like and schedule your test drive online. Follow them on Facebook. Sunbury Motors Ford and Hyundai, North 4th Street, Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf.
Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, NIL Game Changers, and Sunbury Motor Company. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
This half hour brought to you by NIL Game Changers, the ultimate destination for name, image, and likeness opportunities for both athletes and businesses. Visit nilgamechangers.org to start your journey. All right, Todd, buckle up. This has all the earmarks of being an on-air disaster. All right, welcome. Great to have Matt on the show.
Steve Jones, it is good to hear you again, my friend, and welcome back after some time in Mini.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time there. I did four days worth of shows there. Yikes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I was there for a while.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing.
So now I get to hear all your complaints.
I know, it's been long overdue. Well, I have to give Todd credit. He took good care of me last week while you were in the air, literally. So, but it's good to be back with you this week. And, you know, I do want to talk about Mr. Brian Cashman and the Yankees, but this just came across, and I can't, you know, as you know me, Steve, I can't ignore stupid. And once again, I've talked about this before, you and I both have, actually, when it comes to the continued dumb kicking and screaming with this grant of rights deal and nonsense in the ACC. Talked about this with Florida State, and now Clemson today decides that it's going to send a lawsuit against the ACC. And I'm just looking at what they're calling it and what they're trying to word this as, and I'm literally just laughing out loud reading this article by Pete Thamel. It says, in filing in a court of common pleas in Pickens County, South Carolina, Clemson calls into question both the ACC's grant of rights and exit fees unconscionable and unenforceable. Unconscionable? Do you hear yourself? Of course it's going to be unconscionable, and it's going to be $130 million plus because you signed a 10-plus year agreement. What did you expect it was going to be to get out of something like this? I mean, let's think about who's running these things again. These are supposedly higher educated people and executives that are running this thing, and yet these people seem to don't have a clue or don't have any logic to them. Unconscionable? Of course it's going to be a lot of money if you want to get yourself out of a contract. This goes back to the basics. if you sign a contract and it's there, guess what? You're going to be held accountable to it. And if not, it's going to cost you. That's how this works. And unenforceable, I mean, that's just nonsense right there. And they also called it nonsensical reading, wrong, and inconsistent with the plain language of that agreement. I mean, the embarrassment of this lawsuit keeps going on and on. Guess what? You're stuck there. Maybe you should have thought about this when you signed this, how many years ago it was, and maybe saw some of this coming, and you wouldn't be in this mess right now. You're not going anywhere, so stop it, please.
They claim the number when it's all said and done, and on this show there's a lot more said than done, at $572 million. That's a big number. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
And not only, and Clemson's in the same boat as Florida State. They didn't just sign it once. They signed it twice. I mean,
yes, that's right. That? Which makes this even dumber when you think about all of the words that they're calling this in this lawsuit. I mean, it is just laughable.
Yeah, it is. Well, I'll say this: attorneys are getting rich.
Yeah, I mean, I should have thought about my maybe I should make an attorney to be my second job if you're going to get this amount of stupid people trying to file lawsuits like this. They're the ones that are winning in this case.
Well, I mean, look at the beautiful new building that Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe just moved into. Incredible. All right, so I think they're the suits attorneys, aren't they? All right, and they're busy overtime.
No, I'm just going to stay away from that rabbit hole.
So, your superstar has a sore toe and a bellyache. He's out. Your top pitcher feels a twinge in his somewhere elbow. He's out. And your best player is now Giancarlo Stanton, and he might as well be out.
Well, hopefully it's Juan Soto, because he's been having a heck of a spring. Hopefully he's the best player. He should be the best player, but that's another topic.
If he goes 0 for 8 in the first 2 games of the season, his average is 0.
Yes, exactly. And guess what? That also wouldn't shock me, which is one of the reasons why I didn't want Soto in the first place. But so that's why I'm not necessarily holding my breath with the great spring that he's had. I mean, but you're right. I mean, you look at the pitching staff, and this is kind of where my main beef has been with this. And I mentioned this before I left the show. Was you look at the Yankees pitching staff last year to this year. Last year, obviously, it was weak, except for Garrett Cole, and everything else. It was injuries, and it was just weak. There was no depth. And I said going into this offseason, this is a huge offseason for Brian Cashman if you didn't decide to fire him, which he should have been fired in the first place. But to build the pitching staff again and stop worrying about the bats. I know hitting wasn't great last year, but guess what? If you actually get some pitching to back up your hitting, then maybe it'll all work itself out a little bit, and you can stop buying hundreds of millions of dollars on big bats that are probably just going to choke under the New York spotlight anyway, like we've seen in the past with guys we've just mentioned, and maybe even Juan Soto for that matter. You had out there Blake Snell until today signing a nice deal with the Giants, and you still have out there Jordan Montgomery. What are you waiting for? And now, especially when Garrett Cole's on the shelf for the next 3 to 4 weeks, Rondon, even though he pitched the best outing of his entire Yankee career, which is sad, but he did yesterday, but you don't know what consistency you're going to get. Marcus Stroman, you don't know what you're going to get from at all. Then you have a bunch of no-names that are battling out for the 5th spot right now, and you look at the bullpen even. I look at the names that's projected. These guys aren't good enough to compete to win the AL East and to compete for a World Series. I mean, Brian Cashman, once again, has just wasted this entire offseason, especially when you have guys like Blake Snell, Jordan Montgomery, and the like that were still on the table up until today when Snell signed with the Giants, and you don't put a dime on that yet? I mean, what do you – I don't understand at all. Brian Cashman has completely lost me, and it is well overdue to make a change in the front office with the Yankees. Because I'll tell you what, this should be for every Yankee fan out there right now. My expectations for this season are at an all-time low. I can't tell you going into a Yankee season where I've had the least amount of expectations as for this team. I could see this team finishing dead last in the AL East this year. I really could, because you don't know what the injuries are already. It's already been wreaking havoc, especially with DJ LeMahieu now, who also can't get off on the right foot. And then with this weak pitching staff, especially with no Garrett Cole for 3 to 4 weeks to start the year, I mean, it is literally just laughable on how horrible an offseason this has been for Brian Cashman.
Well, they're not going to finish last. The Red Sox are in the division. Come on.
Okay, maybe second to last, maybe. But regardless, they're not going anywhere. They're not going to make the playoffs, and the drought is going to continue. This team is not nearly as good enough to be a playoff contender, let alone a World Series contender.
Judge hasn't taken batting practice since March 10th due to a abdominal discomfort.
And I talked about this with Todd last week. You missed this. The spring training fatigue, I mean, how lame was that, and how badly handled was that? Just if you would have just said the abdominal thing, okay, fine. I can deal with that, because that's all I deal with there, Judge, is injuries. But to call it spring training fatigue when he's been there already, I mean, that was embarrassing.
Well, the MRI, he got an MRI on the 11th. Extremely unimpressive. The MRI was clean.
Exactly.
I can't go. What do you mean you can't go? It's like there's nothing wrong with you.
I mean, supposedly he's coming back today. I'm holding my breath till it actually happens, and then he how he actually does after a day and actually swinging the baseball bat once again.
Yeah, the Jordan Montgomery thing on several teams' front, I find to be very surprising. It's one of the reasons why they are having. Ooh, the Yankees are going to give away a George Costanza bobblehead. Oh, I love it.
Yeah, I saw that.
This is great.
Yeah, wonderful.
The first 18,000 fans to the Yankees matchup with the Red Sox on July 5th on Seinfeld night.
Yes. This is what the New York Yankees organization has come down to. Winning World Series to give it away a George Costanza or a bobblehead. That's what I'm saying. This is as low as it gets.
Hitting is not about muscle. It's simple physics. After he smashes a home run, Jeter asks, "Who are you again?" To which he says, "George Costanza, assistant to the traveling secretary." It's one of the highest.
Well, guess what? Derek Jeter, I can't recall a game where Derek Jeter missed due to spring training fatigue. I can tell you that much.
George Costanza. If you keep your door shut, nobody comes in because they're afraid they're interrupting you.
The door is always shut. The on-air light is always on, so everybody knows what's happening.
Oh, goodness great. First 18,000 fans, a George Costanza bobblehead. Assisted to the traveling secretary. It even says that. It's Seinfeld night. I might go to that game.
You should. You might as well.
You know what? You know what's going to be the same that night as today? Aaron
Judge is probably not going to be playing, and Giancarlo Stanton's going to go 0 for 4 strikeouts.
Not going to play. But the Jordan Montgomery thing I find mystifying. Everybody knows he is a quality pitcher. He's not a number one. But he's a 2-3 guy. And see, this is one of the reasons why the players in the Players Association want one of the executives out, because they're seeing the pattern on free agency drop. And here, right? The Yankees and Red Sox committed less than $50 million to free agents, and 8 teams, Oakland, Baltimore, Washington, Tampa Bay, Minnesota, Miami, Cleveland, and Colorado, guaranteed less than $15 million to free agents. And so they're mad at the Players Association because of the deal that's in place. Well, we could have made you a free agent. We keep bringing you back.
And that's always appreciated.
Yeah. And the suits door is always open because he's just desperate to talk to anybody.
Yes, I am still quite aware of that.
Oh, come on in. I want to talk. Really busy. All right, thanks.
I'm going to feel bad when we get closer to IndyCar, when we get close to the Indy 500.
No, I won't. All right. Well, all right. Be good.
All righty. We'll talk to you guys next week.
All right. See ya.
See ya.
Right. I don't think Brian Cashman came out of that feeling great.
I wonder what would happen if you put Matt, Brian Cashman, and Harry Roseman in a room together.
Well, I think probably Howie and Brian would bond.
Yeah.
All right.
Good point.
All right. We'll come back with more in a moment. Neil Coulon coming up next hour here on News Radio 1070 WKOK. This half hour brought to you by NIL Game Changers.
Party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is because it's Brewers Outlet time. The Beverage Supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you. And thank you for your years of patronage.
You want a unique way to display your brand. You need a team of seasoned experts to work with. You want to reach customers who buy. You want NIL Game Changers, a versatile consulting agency powered by former student athletes and coaches who work as NIL sports agents. NIL Game Changers will help you build powerful relationships with customers through compelling stories, with student athlete influencers as your leading edge. Finally, we'll equip you with the right media to drive your success home. NILGameChangers.org, building meaningful relationships with your customers.
All right. I thought the most, we talked about a lot of interesting things, but in the last hour, maybe not in the last 10 minutes, no, I'm just kidding. But it's interesting that the social media commentary is still one that I talk to my broadcast students about all the time. And I understand, as I said to them, I said, look, it's your era of broadcaster has to be on it. I've told them that. So you have to be. So I understand it's just the way it is. I feel so fortunate, Todd. I don't have to be on it.
We've actually kind of gone away from it over the last 2 years, where we don't need to be as on it as much as we had, as much as we had to, which is great for me. But but yeah, it's I most of the newspapers in our chain are kind of pivoting away from Twitter, because it's just Twitter and Facebook, just because it's not driving engagement like it once did.
Right. Yeah, I think people thought it would drive engagement, and I think what they're finding out is it just doesn't. It just drives commentary and arguments.
Crazy people?
No, that's not like there aren't responsible people on
Yeah.
there that make comments. But I think what's happening is that, and I've said this before, and when I've talked to my students about Twitter fights, I said, look, take a moment And either on Twitter or Instagram or even in the comments section of an article, and just take just a few minutes to see exactly who's making the comments. And you may find that in the end, there may be 100 comments, and the 100 comments were made by 12 people. I said, so you're basing what other praise or criticism is on a dozen people? Because they're not 100 different people commenting. There's usually 12 doing it, and they're going to do it 7 or 8 times.
As I hate to preface it like this, but as an older person, that's one thing I don't understand is how much people younger than us put so much stock in what somebody says on the internet. That it can ruin your whole day if some nameless person doesn't like something that you did that you have no idea who it is, but it's just amazing that how people dwell a lot more in the negative these days than they used to, I think.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a good question, or a good comment, because, for example, I may have a question about, like take Purdy insurance. Okay. So I may have a question about insurance. What about this? What about that? But when I'm talking to them, I feel like I'm talking to the expert on the subject, so I'm trying to get more information from them. Okay? In our business, whether you're a player, a coach, or a broadcaster, people are commenting on the job you do, pro and con, and they have no idea what goes into your job. They hear you talk. They see you coach. They watch you play, right? I just got a text from Wheels. Steve, I'm 2 for 2 in fairways hit, 16 more to go. I told you he's striping it.
I'm more impressed that he's 10 minutes into his round and they're on the second hole already.
Oh, they're flying. No. I love the fact. Oh, my goodness. But it doesn't mean you don't make mistakes when you do your job. You do, okay? You can't be on the air for 5 to 7 hours consecutively and not make a mistake somewhere along the way, all right? Or mistakes somewhere along the way. So I got that, especially in a live setting. If you're making mistakes on a recorded setting, you got a problem, okay? Yeah, it means you just don't feel like redoing it. But if you're doing something, whether it's as a coach in a live setting for 5 hours, as a player in a live setting for 5 hours, or as a broadcaster, and 9 times out of 10, you already know what the mistake is. In other words, I don't need your help. I already know I made the mistake. I don't need that being pointed out. But I don't pay attention to it. I just don't. I'm with people who don't pay attention to it. You think Dick Girardi cares about? Yo, man, no. Jack Ham?
That when you guys were talking about that, I was trying to imagine Jack Ham getting fired up about what somebody thinks of it. I just can't imagine that happening.
I mean, no. And I'm the same way. I'm like, yeah, whatever. You think you can do a better job? Apply for it. Go ahead. Right?
Pretty much.
Yeah. I'm sure they're taking applications. Go ahead.
It's not as easy as it looks.
All right.